Hey guys, VaulSC here. Hope that you are doing well. Thought I'd come back to you with another bat rep from the little event that I was at a couple of weekends ago. Remember this, although it was an ITS event, we're talking about like 6 people, so very small, casual, low-key. I took my OSS, showed you the game against White Company recently on the channel. Just thought I'd cover one other game, and this game was quite special. It was the most exciting of the games that I played. It was against Corregidor and my buddy Steve, who was kindly hosting me and giving me a room to stay in over the weekend while I was, an hour out of town. So that was really, really cool. We're just going to dive straight into it. The mission will be supplies, and I'll just talk you briefly through the Parvati list that I was running here for supplies. So, Parvati, of course, everybody knows about her. This is not really going to be a video about OSS. And by the way, if you want to know more about OSS, elsewhere on my channel, in fact, if you look through the playlists, there's a Infinity Sectorial Faction Review playlist and a very recent video explaining all the things that I do and don't like about OSS and how to play them and reviewing the profile, so I definitely recommend checking that out. But the main thing about Parvati is that she saves you from having to use a proxy engineer, so you can take a different proxy, and she's extremely good at engineering the Dakinis, who are likely to go unconscious at some point because of their remote presence. You're going to be leaving them on the board, they're going to drop prone, you're going to have a chance to repair them, and Parvati does that extremely well. And then, of course, when you move out with them as a group, she is great at pressing buttons and very good at close range doing damage. As always, the multi-sniper and HMG, I feel that the way that those two guns cover the range bands is just really, really good, and I love having the option of either sniping them long range with more damage or winning the face-to-face rolls medium range with more burst. And I have started to like taking the Apsara again. Initially I took her, then sort of fell out of favor with her. The fact is that if you are banking your game on having this this shootout, this absolutely necessary shootout between your best long-range thing and their best long-range thing, +2 ballistic skill can really go a long way. And one thing I've been seeing in my own meta a lot is a huge lack of terrain. So given that we're going to have to commit to that long-range firefight, having +2 ballistic skill, for me, really, really is worth it. So you have the Apsara there, then of course you have the Evo hacker device always with the Dakinis, and this bad boy goes up to something like hitting on a 19. If you factor in the base 13 from the Apsara, +3 for range, +3 for the link, and you ignore the cover because of the Evo bot putting assisted fire there, it's really, really deadly. Active turn or reactive turn. Got a couple of Nagas in there to help control the midfield. This is the mission supply, so of course the mine layer helps to stop them from grabbing a box, whereas your killer hacker helps you to grab the box. Shurker Lieutenant in the same group as the Dakinis for when they want to move out as a one big squad, and of course to give a Strategos order over to the Naga. Then in group 2, we've got the rest of the guys here, just all of the backup cheerleaders plus the proxy team. Because we're running Parvati rather than the tag, we have enough points to take the 3 proxies. Really love these guys. They're Mark II hacker, brilliant at growing out and grabbing boxes in the midfield for this mission. The heavy rocket launcher, you can just put him somewhere, let him die, doesn't matter, he's not very expensive, doesn't really provide an order, so you can just let him go. And active turn, if they just stand in front of him, can be very useful with his rocket launcher SMG. This guy can even go into suppression fire. He even comes with a nanopulsar. Armor 5 on a 20-point guy. Really do like him. And of course the ubiquitous Forward Observer guy, because again, 13 points for an NWI model who's just armed to the teeth with stats through the roof. It's just crazy. So pretty stock standard VaulSC OSS list. Now my opponent's list is sort of semi-recreated here. I really don't know what was actually in his list. This is just me padding some things out from memory. So I do know that he was playing the Gecko multi-marksman rifle. This guy pumps out a lot of damage with the +2 damage ability there. So he has gotten a lot better for N4, and of course comes with the tactical awareness, and armor's more useful nowadays, and having multi-marksman rifle with the ability to use AP or shock, very, very good. So he's actually not bad at all. The Mobile Brigada missile launcher, definitely like that in Corregidor. My opponent was saying something about a Wildcat being in this list, but I can't really remember it doing anything. He definitely did take the Evader Engineer with Spitfire, which is not bad for the firewall onto Jazz. You definitely want to take Jazz. I still prefer to actually take Jazz and Billy as the combo there, even though they're not going to go on the link team. You're getting that 6-point Billy bot, who is just really a steal. Then beyond that, of course, you put a bunch of Algor Seals in to top that out. Carlotta Kowalski, of course, extremely good because of Parachutist Deployment Zone. The thing that's really missing from this list for me is McMurray. I still think McMurray is overpowered and sort of needs to be there. So when I'm running Corregidor, that's really what I'm going to be putting there. But I mean, you can't really argue too much with some of the other choices there. I mean, he did take 4 Jaguars, which I think is overkill. You want to kind of keep the costs down by taking a couple of transductors, then you can start to afford another Moran, things like that. So, yeah, not an optimized list by any means. And again, this is not the actual list. This is just, you know, a rough indication of a few of the things that he did take. So we're going to jump into the game. Alright, so the mission is supplies. I am luckily able to take first for this particular game. First is a pretty good choice for supplies because it allows you to obviously get the Alpha Strike with shooting things which are watching the table, and then grab 2 of the boxes out of the possible 3, run away with them, and then find a way to just really bog your opponent down and stop them from getting to the boxes by the end of the game, which is usually a winning strategy. So I'm beginning to deploy here just to point out what's what. Let's just get a pen. So there's the 3 supply cratey things out in the middle. I've got my Naga mine layer over here, just putting a mine next to the objective. That's what we're doing there. We've got, I think this is the Shukra over there. The main Dakini squad's going to set up on this side, basically covering these angles. I have a feeling this is the exact same table that I showed the previous bat rep on, ironically. So sorry about the lack of diversity there. We only had 3 tables over the weekend, of course, and incidentally, the 2 games that I'm showing you guys happen to be on those 2 on the same table, but you know, what can I say? They happen to be the most interesting of the games. Alright, so let's have a closer look at my left-hand flank. We've got Parvati, represented by the Spec Ops LF model, a Warcore down the bottom here. So she is joined by the Sniper, the HMG, Dakini Combi back here, and the CSU, who I believe has, I don't know, regen, climbing class, can't remember what it was. EvoBot back here, that's in the position to either put the marksmanship onto the HMG or onto the Sniper, and then Netrod just hanging right out the back there so that it can hopefully survive. Oh, and my HVT around the left-hand side. I think there are 2 classified objectives in this mission, so you've got to bear that in mind. In fact, they are there. 2 classified cards right there. Okay, so this is the middle of my deployment zone. I have the proxy rocket launcher here. He's just watching this approach to my link team. He's standing on top of this, which is taller than Silhouette 2, so that should give him the height advantage, also covering the middle of the field as well. We've got the proxy post German out in the middle to grab the middle box, the Apsara, just watching for Carlotta or Hellcats or whatever might appear at the back. She's providing, of course, her ballistic skill to the Sniper in the link team. Right-hand side of the table, the Lieutenant just hiding away here. You can see the Apsara we just talked about. This is the basic baggage bot providing its little repeater range. And Netrod right at the back here, and this Proxy Mark V, just again watching out in case of Carlotta or Hellcats, just things that might appear to threaten my Lieutenant's position. Okay, a further look into the midfield. So I talked about my Proxy Mark II hacker, which is going to go grab that box and then run away and hide somewhere. I also have a mine in front of the objective, and of course a Naga killer hacker also in front of the objective, because I want to grab it and run away, and that is overall going to be the strategy in the first game round. My opponent just beginning to place these Algor Seals and Jaguars just in total cover right at the back. They're going to be cheerleaders for the entire game and will do nothing. Again, my recommendation to players who are newer and want to do better with Nomads and Corregidor in particular is to take a couple of Transductor Zones because they are cheaper. You're a faction which is typically pretty good at hacking. You're going to take Jazz. She's a very good hacker, and that extends your repeater range, and overall you save points. You can invest that into the things that will be doing the fight. Whereas if your models are just going to be cheerleaders, try to make them as cheap as possible. So look at his link team through here. We just got some cheerleaders at the back. He's got an Evader through there, unless that's his rocket launcher, missile launcher, I can't quite remember. I think the Evader's down the bottom actually, and then the Brigada's up the top. And then a bunch of Algor Seals, Jazz, that kind of thing, just on top of that building. So here we are here. Yeah, so he's got the missile launcher through the center, Evader on ground level, then a bunch of cheerleaders up the top. There is a Moran. This is on his right-hand side, so just to give you the perspective on this, The link team, so this is one of the objectives to his right. This is a Moran right here. That's a Crazy Koala. And towards that side of the table is the position of the Dakini link team. So he may be able to move this Moran close to that position later. Reserve Trooper, I believe, is a Gecko, just popping down here behind this crate. And for me, I'm just making sure that I tell my opponent that the Apsara's bonus is on the Sniper right here. So he's got the link team buff, and he's got the Apsara bonus, and I believe since I'm going first, I'm putting this green pebble to mark the fact that he's got assisted fire. So, one thing I realized is that, in fact, I'll go to this photo here. One thing that caught me off guard here is the terrain, and this is the fault of nobody. It's just a thing that sometimes happens in Infinity. We are playing on a table that features terrain that's owned by my opponent. He's very used to playing on this terrain. For me, I brought one of the other tables. You guys saw it in one of the other, well, not the other bat reps, in the other photos. The point is that we're playing on his table, not mine. And one thing I didn't realize is that this bridge here is actually taller than a Silhouette 2 that would be standing here. Okay? So the plan is for my Dakini Sniper to move out to the cover and then move back. The position of the sniper will be right there next to that crate, and it will be able to see the position of his mobile brigada with missile launch in the distance, who I want to eliminate or at least knock back into total cover before I go and grab the boxes, because he's watching the table. He's just on aero duty at the moment. The thinking there is that I'll be hitting on 19s with 3 dice, and he'll be hitting on 13s with 2 dice, which gives me a massive advantage. And even if I do get struck by a missile, there's a possibility that I'll pass 1 out of 3 of the armor saves. The Dakini won't be removed from the table, and then Parvati can simply move over here and revive him. What caught me off guard, though, is this terrain thing. My opponent said, oh, no, I don't think you can actually see me, because this is just a little bit too tall. When I eyeballed it, it looked like I was going to be slightly taller, but look, you know, fair's fair. It's not him trying to make something up. He was actually correct. Once we measured it and got the tournament organizer to make a ruling, it was found that I couldn't actually shoot over that. So my solution was to basically instead move this sniper around to this wall. The wall itself has a certain thickness, so what you're allowed to do technically is to partially move onto the wall and then move back down again. So of course you can't end your movement touching the wall, but you're allowed to use it to vault up slightly, and that's what allows me to actually position my silhouette here touching the side of the wall and actually shooting over that. The problem with this, of course, is that I won't have cover. So my opponent will be hitting on 16s with 2 dice, I'll be hitting on 19s with 3 dice. Still advantageous for me, but more risky than I would have liked, and of course it means it's even more difficult for me to pass the armor save. So unluckily, the sniper does indeed go down, breaks the link. I now have to spend an order on Parvati to revive him, a commando can to restore the link, but that's exactly what happened. And given the situation, I mean, even if I can't pick up the boxes this turn, I've got the missile launcher guy there in front of me. If I can take him down, I'll be at an advantage because I can then set up my aero pieces. And this is a player who doesn't actually have any HMGs in his list at all. He's going to be relying on the Evader AP Spitfire or the multi-marksman from the Gecko, so it puts me in a great position. So what happens is the Dakini then moves out, does get the snipe on the missile launcher, does in fact take him down, which was great. So I had a little bit of bad luck, then I had a little bit of good luck. We're kind of even. I've spent the resources, and then I can move to my other group and start spinning the orders, grabbing the box with the post-human, which she does, of course, easily with willpower 15, starts running away, has just enough orders to retreat back here next to this war core. She does have NWI, so even if he comes around from this side of the battlefield, she can fail guts and go back up the stairs, is the thinking there. So that's 1 box of supplies obtained. Then, of course, on the other side, we have the Group 1 orders going on to this Naga Killer Hacker, who goes and grabs the box from the other objective and starts running away. He's got just enough orders to grab the box from here, move around the side, climb up onto the 2nd floor of this building, then go prone, lay a mine, and effectively just hide in the little corner here. So after this turn is done, we have OSS picking up 2 supply crates, moving both of the capturing pieces back, getting into good defensive situations. I've set up the link team again, and nobody's really died because I've revived the Dakini. So that's the Dakini's position, just hanging out here. Dakini is the one standing up. We do have the HMG standing up as well. It's fully buffed with the power-up from the Psara and the Evo Repeater assisted fire, so it's a strong first turn, and I've punished my opponent for really just putting a missile launcher there and hoping that it's going to survive up against OSS, which is a very good faction for cracking that kind of thing. He hasn't survived, and of course also punished my opponent for not really having enough stuff in his list to control the midfield. I've avoided his one Moran, and I've basically taken the other two crates that weren't protected by the Moran's Crazy Koala. So here we are over here. Lieutenant goes into suppression fire just in case Carlotta tries to come up and kill him. And then it's over to Corregidor, turn 1, to try and counterattack and come back into the game. So the Gecko is moving up. He's got tactical awareness. He's not being seen by the sniper at this point. He's just working his way through the table. So this is a really important moment in the game. I just want to move my camera down the bottom here as I discuss the goings on. So the Gecko has moved to that position there. You can see marked by the green arrow. There he is there. Bit of a blurry photo. I have the Dakini sniper standing up and the HMG sniper standing up. As he moves past this billboard, he's gonna run into a firefight with this guy. Okay. So let's talk about the odds here and the importance of this shootout. If the Gecko repeatedly loses against the sniper and just can't really advance over to my side of the board, he's in a world of trouble because it's going to allow me to further retreat with the box carriers. I could even move out with the link team with Parvati and so forth and outmaneuver the Gecko and kill him and even retreat back to my deployment zone. I will have so many orders if that happens. If the Gecko does gun down the sniper, chances are Parvati will be able to heal him later, so he's going to have to gun down the HMG. Again, Parvati can bring the HMG back. Then he'll have to move through here. He'll have to get through a war core and the proxy rocket launcher. So all of this is doable. It's just difficult. It's just unlikely. And you also run the risk of leaving your Gecko stranded out here by the end of the turn, in which case OSS can just pick the Gecko off and then revive things thanks to Parvati's amazing engineering ability. So just coming back to the Gecko for a second, the Gecko is Ballistic Skill 13. He will be hitting on 10s with 4 dice because the multi-marksman rifle is burst 3 with +1 burst on the profile. That is 4 dice. He's +3 for range, -3 for cover, then -3 for the mimetism on the Dakini. So 4 dice on 10s. The sniper, on the other hand, is shooting with 2 dice, but I think needing either 16s or 19s, depending on whether this dotted line is 16 inches or not. So you guys can see the problem there, right? It's very easy for the OSS player just to roll something that's kind of middling, like an 8 or a 9 or a 10, and for the Gecko to not actually roll one of those numbers and then lose. Then you've got to take a double action shot. Or for the Dakini player to roll anywhere between like a 10 and a 16 on 2 dice, which is very doable, and that completely shuts the Gecko out of avoiding the face-to-face roll, and again, he's taking damage. He would otherwise have to crit. My feeling is that the Gecko does, over like 4 or 5 orders, he's got a pretty good shot at eventually taking the Dakini down, so long as he's passing a lot of armor saves and isn't just completely dying. But I want you guys to sort of get the feel for this and see why this is just such a tall order for the Gecko, because he's got to take down the sniper, then he's got to cleanly kill the HMG, and then he's got to walk out past the rocket launcher, which is covering this angle, along with the war core covering that angle, and then do something meaningful to the troops behind that, because if you just kill those 4 models, you get the 2 Dakinis, and you get the war core, and you get the post-human. Well, Parvati revives both Dakinis, the post-human didn't really give up an order, and the war core doesn't really matter, and the OSS player already has the supply crate, so that's terrible. Having said all of that, I still think this is a reasonable play for the Corregidor player to make. The Gecko is actually giving the Corregidor player a shot at getting back into the game. If you're behind, you do need to take risks. So I'm not going to call this a bad play. By no means is this like a really shocking blunder by our Corregidor friend here. It's actually decent, and it's something I probably would have attempted as well, especially because you've got an evader further back there. I just want to explain to people why this is such a difficult thing to pull off and why it's probably more likely than not that by the end of this turn, the Corregidor player has only really killed a couple of Dakinis and hasn't really got there to threaten Parvati, and has has maybe taken down a Warcore and a proxy. That's, you know, the best you can really hope for. Anything more than that, and you kind of do need to kill more than that, is unlikely. And in fact, a possibility here is just losing the Gecko straight up. So that's the theory, and that's, you know, if you only remember one thing about this bat rep, I just want you guys to understand the interaction and the importance of knowing, as a, you know, as a good player, as a person who wants to do better with Infinity, what's at stake there and what's likely to happen or not happen. So what actually in fact happens here is that he does roll very, very well with the Gecko, does take down the sniper immediately. That does break the link team. He then does move through here to take on the HMG and cleanly kills the HMG, or at least removes it, renders it unconscious. So that's 2 for 2, being very efficient with the orders, not really having to take many setbacks here. If it takes 3 or 4 orders to beat this sniper, that's a different story. You have very few orders left. So here we are, unconscious HMG, unconscious sniper, very successful Gecko. The Gecko then does poke around to this position around about here, where it's actually having to do a face-off against this posthuman. The posthuman, again, is armor 5. It's got 2 wounds. It's got a rocket launcher, but the Gecko rolling extraordinarily well, just taking him off cleanly with 1 volley. Doesn't pass any armor saves, doesn't block him with a hit from the rocket launcher. He just dies very, very cleanly. And again, you know, these individual shootouts are reasonable for the Gecko, but for those of you guys who know much about probability and mathematics or have played a lot of Infinity, you can probably feel that cleanly killing several things without running into any difficulty is a tough ask for something, you know, with just BS13 burst 4. So he's continuing to come through. This is the Gecko piling on the damage against the Warcore, which you can see the top right of the photo. He does kill the Warcore quite cleanly. Again, the Warcore can hit on a 16 here. The Gecko's needing 16s as well. The Warcore has a chance of slowing him down. That doesn't happen. So the Gecko is able to quite comfortably move up the top here. Interestingly, the Evo repeater isn't actually a repeater. That's one fun thing to bear in mind, is that the Probot deactivator repeater obviously is the one you want there for extending your hacking range. The Evo repeater doesn't have a repeater, which is why, as he moves up here to threaten Parvati, I can't hack him with my Proxy Mark II through the Evo repeater, which is downstairs, which is down beyond that. So with just a couple of orders left, the Gecko is trying to take out Parvati. Parvati does manage to survive, you know, getting a little bit of luck here to dodge Parvati behind the crate here. I've been unlucky with both the Dakinis, the Warcore, and the Proxy. At least I'm having a little bit of luck with Parvati just to dodge back here behind this obstacle. So, the Gecko is mostly powered by orders from one of his groups. His army list is split fairly evenly between pools. He then decides to completely uproot his link team and move them all out to try and finish the job. And this is a risky play again. Like, the problem with this is that if he somehow flubs it and ends up with a team sitting out in the middle of nowhere, it gives me a chance to come back in the game despite taking massive damage. But it's still something which you can do if you're very tight, if you're very skillful with exactly where to move your models and what activations to use. So everything's standing up at this point. He's actually moving everything towards my deployment zone just to try and go for the kill. And look, this is not a bad play. You've got to play bold if your opponent's taken both of the supply crates and they've got a position where they can revive things and start to punch back at you. So everybody's moving along through here. Parvati has dodged prone. She did get line of sight to one of the guys on ground level, so she's dodged prone as they're coming towards her position. Here they are all here. They're moving straight through the center of the battlefield. They're not even bothering to stop to grab the supply crates. He's going to have the final turn. He can do that later. So this is a really crucial moment in the game where he decides eventually to move everyone through here. And he's getting one of his Securitates. I mean, the action's so fast and furious, the model's actually physically broken off its base. But eventually he gets to a point where he's going to move one of the Alguacils through into base contact with his HMG and commit the coup de grace to pick up a classified objective. What that's going to do is it's going to give line of sight to my Apsara at the top right of this photo, who's going to take a long-range SMG shot into this model as it steps in to grab the corpse of the Dakini. This will also prevent Parvati from reviving it, mind you, if she does manage to break out of the position. So, crucial moment here. Alguacil moves in to remove the corpse of the HMG. The Apsara takes a desperate long-range shot with the SMG, -3 range, -3 cover, needing a 7. She does specifically roll a 7, so I'm lucky to roll a crit there, but it has to be mentioned that I could also have rolled a 6 or less and had him fail the armor save. That's also very much possible. So the Alguacil does indeed go down, but he does indeed remove the HMG and picks up a classified objective. The link team is broken. So there you go. There's the victorious Apsara making her long-range shot. We also finally have the Gecko moving out here, and another move which I feel is a mistake from our Corregidor player, a little bit less experienced, but does try to go straight into close combat and make a close combat attack against Parvati. Again, Parvati is, she is responding with, I think, a dodge, because she doesn't want to get hit by his chain rifles. But the best thing to do here from the tag is really just to shoot her, because you need to remove her off the table and secure a win. The reason my opponent is going into close combat with her to try and tie her up is because his other classified allows him to get a point from doing damage to her in close combat. But this mission isn't really about grabbing the classifieds. You need to get both supply crates off me, or at least pick the other one up and then pick one of mine up to win. And the classifieds won't really matter. This is still the first game round, so he's really going to try and solidify things. If somehow Parvati makes it to her turn and gets a lucky spray down with her SMGs, and then he loses the Gecko, I mean, that is possible. She could just tank a chain rifle save. I mean, if I get a little bit lucky there, then I'm starting to get back into the game, and it's a problem for him. So Parvati actually lives and ends up in close combat here, dodging in there and tying him up. She is wounded, but she's got NWI, and yeah, this is now a combat lockup. Right, so turn 2 for OSS after Corregidor runs out of orders. It's turning into be a really exciting game. I did very well on my first turn. My opponent has been very lucky in his second turn, but he's made some reasonable plays. I feel like he's made 2 mistakes. That is, just ignoring my free arrow with my Apsara, and trying greedily to take a wound from me in close combat with a Gecko, when he really could have just been using those orders, just shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting and just putting me out of the game. That's what he should have done. But I've been brought back into the game as a result. Overall, my opponent's very ballsy, balls to the wall, picking up the link team, throwing the Gecko straight into my face. Those are plays that I agree with. Even though they weren't as likely to do what they did, he's played well to give him a chance to win now, and that's certainly what he has, given how well that last turn went for him. So now it's my turn to make some risky plays, try and get back in it. The Shruka picks up. The Shruka, if I recall correctly, has a multi-rifle. Yes, he does. And my opponent's link team's broken. The Gecko can't respond because he's locked in close combat. So the Shruka can shoot long range and hit those Alguacils around about here on 5s long range. My opponent trying to shoot back at me, but I've got the weight of the dice, and after a few orders, I've taken down a couple of his members here. This allows the proxy to poke around the corner and shoot at Jazz with the boarding shotgun, take her down. So I'm starting to pick away at him, get back in the game. She then moves up the top here and starting to fire her long-range shotgun at this evader. He's got a couple of wounds, but I've eliminated his friends, and the shotgun just getting closer and closer and closer. Unfortunately for me, the evader's continuing to evade me, pun intended, getting out of the way. But the proxy moving towards him and trying to pick him off by the end of it. As he retreats up the stairs, I'm spending the orders in my other group on this linkless Dakini, unfortunately not involved in the link team. Just moving over here. This does give the Gecko a chance to dodge out of close combat if he wants, but the combi rifle being shot at the evader, who continues to evade, going up the stairs, I think taking a wound, but the combi proving ineffective. As the Gecko leaves close combat, I'm deciding to move Parvati back in again and try and gun him down. Parvati stripping a wound off him with her mini burst from her SMG. Using AP rounds, this does quite a lot of hits on my opponent, but he's fortunately able to pass some armor saves. The Dakini continuing to fire at the evader unsuccessfully. We eventually get the proxy moving through and hitting him with a slug from the shotgun and knocking him down, which does kill the evader. And the play here is to make sure that he can't counterattack me. The proxy, of course, can just drop prone later on as an ARO, and hopefully we'll be able to hack the gecko if it gets too close. I'm just really hoping that she survives and I get a decent final turn. Towards the end of this turn, the CSU stands up and moves over here. The thinking is if the gecko leaves close combat, he has only got one wound left because Parvati is stripped him down to the last wound. If he leaves close combat, Parvati can try and nail him, but he doesn't, so the CSU can then move into close combat. This is decent for me because the CSU's reasonable close combat and it has the burst bonus from Parvati, and this assures me of locking him up. And from now on, if the gecko spends any orders, it's going to be 2 models hammering him, not just 1. Sadly, though, I did get unlucky here. The gecko just bashes the CSU in the face, so I lose a model for nothing, and it's back to just being Parvati versus the gecko. So that was extremely annoying. Bit of bad luck there, but I also had some reasonable luck with the Shukra, so just, ups and downs. That's the end for me. My opponent going on to his second turn, unfortunately the proxy post-human is out of position here, so he moves his Moran around, eventually gets to her, and even though she's -6 to hit, enough shots with the combi rifle after placing, of course, the koala does take her down. The gecko breaking out of close combat by just bashing Parvati in the face. Sadly, she dies. A little bit unlucky there with Parvati, but, the tag just beats her straight away, and he's now able to move around and start gunning things down. We have the Moran moving over to pick up the supply crate, so now it's 1 supply crate each, and really not much else I can do. The gecko's moving through to the back of my deployment zone, trying to pick off this Evo bot who somehow survives, I think. We then come over to, I think, my final turn, where the Shukra's standing up, trying to gun down the gecko, which I think he does manage to do. I also have a Naga round over here, which is still holding the supply crate, so that's fine. Moving out with my post-German towards the middle to try and act as an ARO for the one missing supply crate that he hasn't picked up yet. And I've also, if I move back here, I've moved my Naga mine layer down here because his CSU, his HVT is on the other side of that red box. So if I can grab a classified and he hasn't got any classifieds, I've got 1 box, he has only got 1 box, so I might be able to win that way. Little did I know, because he didn't declare it to me, he actually had both classifieds obtained. He just didn't flip his cards over, which he should have, but look, that's okay. Less experienced player, that's alright. So this guy's out in the midfield to try and hopefully provide some arrows. So is the Shukra, but there's not really too much they can do. So my opponent at this point, moving his Moran back around here. He's going to try and get his Moran down to ground level to hit their supply crate. His idea is to drop off the box by having one of the Jaguars take the box off the Moran, and for the Moran to pick up a secondary box from this objective here and win that way. But as he's moving and as he's moving and he's climbing down, he eventually runs out of orders. This photograph here is us showing the position of the Moran. This is a proxy model just out of my my army bag, which I've just grabbed. So he's trying to move 2 inches there and then 2 inches around to here. Didn't quite make it to the objective because he's got to actually get all the way around this obstacle. And this was basically his final order of the turn. Just wasn't able to get into the objective there. So during my turn, I'd picked up 1 classified and secured his HVT, so that's 2 classifieds. My opponent had grabbed both of his classifieds, meaning that it was a draw essentially because he couldn't make it to that objective at the end. Should have managed it, but didn't quite, so the result is a draw. However, as we're packing up our models, I explained to my opponent, one thing I was hoping that you wouldn't do is realize that you could have moved a model to within 8 inches of my HVT, because that means you've got your 2 classifieds and I only get 1, because for me to secure the HVT, I need to ensure that I've got a guy within 8 inches of your high value target, and for you to not have any guys within 8 inches of mine. And after I sort of explained that in the sort of conversation you have with your opponent, sort of telling them what they could and couldn't have done during the game, my opponent was like, oh, I forgot about Carlotta Kowalski, I'll just place her there. So technically this is a win to my opponent. Now, As far as etiquette goes and ethics of wargaming, I just want to say that if you're in this situation, always give your opponent the win, especially if they're a less experienced player. You should never be saying to them, oh, look, I didn't realize the game, was still going. I don't want you to put your model there because you forgot it. We've already had it in the score sheet. Don't try and get a win that way, guys. You got to play fair. You've got to allow your opponent the chance to do this. Nobody wants to win or get a draw because of their opponent forgetting something which can be rolled back instantly. We don't have to make any dice rolls for this. My opponent had forgotten to bring Carlotta on. He had the order available to bring her on right there. And just because I happened to give him this hint a little bit too early and prevented him from just bringing her on in the deployment zone for the sake of army points, you've got to let that slide and let your opponent take it. Look, it didn't change the outcome of our little mini 6-player tournament either. I mean, I still won pretty handily because this guy had lost 2 of his games. I was the only person to lose only 1 game, I think. But it was just a bit of a laughing moment. Also, this is the player who has given me a room to sleep in a shower and, free coffee and stuff like that for, a 48-hour period. So it's the least I could do to be nice to him. I just have to say this was a wonderful game. Congratulates to him to win. He actually made a really valid point that one way I might have been able to win is back in this situation where instead of going after his evader with my proxy posthume in, is I could have just kept retreating her and hid her somewhere, and even though I would have only had 1 turn left after that, it would have been really difficult for him to come after me. Even if I'd like re-camoed or something, for him to have a free evader coming around there to grab her would have been really hard, and of course the proxy could hack him as he comes nearer. So if I'd taken that idea, I might have actually been able to salvage the situation and win. All things said, though, I think this would have been a pretty straightforward win to OSS after that first game round, had the Gecko taken longer to get over there, because he wasn't really expecting to do that well against the Dakini straight away. Also, if I had a repeater back there with somewhere to hack him as he came too close, that would have been really, really good, but I didn't. So it is what it is. It was a really enjoyable, entertaining game. I thought my opponent did really good. I also played pretty well, and that's what it's all about. Hope you guys enjoyed the bat rep of it.